Hello and welcome to the second episode of our Black Hawk build. Today we have a bunch of different things to accomplish, so let's get going. This video comes to you in cooperation with PCBWay, ICM and MRP paints. Moving on to the second page of the instruction booklet. Here we need to glue the sidewalls to the floor, which I'm definitely not going to do. The second thing on this page is to glue these retaining pieces on the ceiling, which again I'm not going to do because they're in a different color than the ceiling itself, which leads us to a whole bunch of seat assembly. You see, this is all about the seats in the cargo or passenger compartment, and there is a lot more of that on the next page, but those are optional. But since usually there is a lot of clutter in this area and this clutter is not provided with the kit, I'm going to put the seats in so it looks a little bit busier. Now let's start removing parts from the sprues. And here we have the good old out of register molding. Not real fun, ain't it? So here we have parts E19 and D14, 13 pieces of each, which after assembly become part 16, which we transfer to the next step and go forward. These ejector pin marks, which are on the back of the seat but maybe will be visible in some of the middle seats, and I will take the time to remove them. While I was preparing these parts, I had enough time to think about the painting, because you see here we have two colors. This bulge part is one color and the other part is another color. Fortunately enough, they are both gray colors, one of them being sky gray and the other being dark sea gray. Now, one option was to put all these parts on a stick for painting and assemble them after the painting, which poses challenges of its own. And the other option that I actually chose was to paint them in the lighter color and then brush paint the darker color, for which I'm probably going to use a sort of a filter or glaze, so that I don't need to be super precise and just shift the color a little bit. And now I have a whole bunch of parts to assemble. Mercifully enough, the fit is good and I don't have the need to do any other adjustments than I already have done. So see you in a bit. Our next task will be to start assembling the seats, the benches with the backrests and the rest of the frames, and removing those is a little bit more challenging. For some reason the sprue connections are very white, and with this thin piece it's very easy to break it. So what I'll do, I'm starting with this section because there is more support, and I will use only the tip of the nippers, so the less amount of movement we have, it is less prone to breaking. When this part is let go of the sprue, we have some movement here, and I hope this will not break. It barely did on this part, which only comes to show that a lot of care should be taken when dealing with these parts especially. This video is sponsored by PCBWay, which are celebrating their 11th anniversary. Right now, through July 18th, they are offering big discounts on PCB fabrication, 3D printing and CNC machining, plus coupon deals, a lucky draw with awesome gifts and more. If you are curious about ordering 3D prints from PCBWay, it's super easy. Just upload your STL file, choose the material and finish, get an instant quote and place your order. It ships fast and looks great. Check the link in the description to grab your discount and join the celebration. The first one I touched to clean up the remnants from the sprue gates broke. And of course I have no idea where the part flew, so I'll have to figure something out. But I have to tell you, removing these things is really not something I want to do, and it takes a lot of time. One important distinction that needs to be made between these seemingly similar parts is that one of them has slightly longer attachment points, and those are 4 pieces that are supposed to go on the rearmost bench that mounts directly to the ceiling. The others are mounted through something to the ceiling. There is nothing to suggest any kind of an angle at which these frames need to be assembled, so I will assume these are perpendicular to the seat base frame, and the actual seat back cushion is making the angle that makes it more comfortable for a human being to sit. Now I will attach first those, and then while the glue is still setting, I will make sure that they set perpendicular to the frame. And I will do this by using my bench and this vise and that should be good enough. Another important thing to mention is that here we have a small and almost invisible groove which is meant to connect with the backrest, so make sure you put it towards the backrest, not towards the back. Now with the frames in position, it is easier to install the backrests, relatively, that is. And believe it or not, here we have the first batch of seats. The row with the higher frames is on the next page for some reason. So let's continue. This, not right now. And we start with another fun thing. Some legs. The instructions mention absolutely nothing about the angle at which these legs should stay, so I hope that I will be able to do some adjustments if necessary when this end will need to meet with the connection points on the floor. And one probably important thing is that here we have this part which should be facing the floor. This one is much shorter, barely existing connection, and it goes into the seat. It is definitely a procedure where a vise like this one is very helpful, because I need both my hands to be free in order to install the legs. I'm starting from the middle legs because then it will be easier to do the outside ones, otherwise I'll have less space to work with. There are three different numbers for these legs: E43, E42, E43 and E44. Now the instructions call that E42 should sit on the outside and E43 should sit on the inside on this three seat row. I failed to find any difference between the parts, and I could not distinguish them when I cut them off the sprue, so I probably mixed them up. But again, I see no meaningful difference, at least between E42 and E43. So I'll keep on gluing them like I do. With the two middle benches and the gunner seats completed, it is time to move on. The next step suggests to assemble the cockpit assembly. However, I'm not going to do that, as you know. And it is time to put together the final bench that sits right next to the back bulkhead. I would like to thank all the amazing people who support me on Patreon. You guys are awesome. And yes, when you make a dozen of this, it sooner or later becomes more easier. So by the time you are finished with the benches, they will become easier. With the seats done, let's forget about them for some time and start assembling what this page wants us to assemble. The cheek windows are very clear and the sprue gate is very cleverly positioned. The lip that is molded in the transparent part provides a really good fit. However, first I'm going to paint that lip with some black paint. The reason I'm doing this is because the thickness of the glass will, the thickness of the plastic rather, will disappear to a large extent, being painted in black. And while the paint on the cheek window is drying, there are a few imperfections to take care of in the form of ejector pin marks. As luck would have it, one of those ejector pin marks is going to be needing filling, so there we have it. Now when this cures, I will remove it. Now for the moment of truth. And there we have it, the cheek window is installed and there are no blemishes caused by the glue, which is always a nice thing. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of flash here and there, or at least I think this is flash. It's not present on the other side, so it will go, and a little bit here too. Not hard to deal with, but there is always a chance that you can remove something that is actually part of the kit. Another thing that needs to be installed in this step is this part E4, which is a, I don't know what it is, but I will clean the rest of the sprue gate after I install it in position. I think it will be much easier to do the cleanup of the part when I have somewhere to hold parts C76 and C77 form a outlet of sorts. This thing will barely need any cleanup because it will not be visible, of course, apart from the interior. So this thing here will need to be cleaned up. Now let's clean up the seam lines here. A roll of fine sandpaper will help with the marks left by the file, and the rest will be melted away using Mr. Cement S, and it looks rather nice. Now let's glue this exhaust pipe in place. This doesn't really want to go inside of the recess, but this is good enough, and that looks pretty good in my opinion. If you recall, this plate here needed some attention. Now that it is firmly in place, it is much easier to give it that attention. Now the instruction call for some 0.8mm holes to be opened in the tail section of the fuselage. So that's exactly what I'm going to do next. Not all of these pre-opened holes are to be drilled through, so pay attention. And that job is done. You can argue those are not the prettiest holes, so let's clean up using an oversized drill bit. To get the latest updates, join me on Patreon. Link I will leave in the description. Now they look tidy. The instructions want us to install the rear bulkhead in the left hand side fuselage half, but to ensure that the bulkhead will properly fit inside both fuselage halves, I'm going to temporarily assemble the fuselage, tape it together, and then I will insert this bulkhead inside. This will ensure that it is where it needs to be, and then I can glue this in. Next up, we get the transfer case and some other bits to install on top of the ceiling of the cabin. Now this assembly should be fairly simple. This shaft section I will assume is supposed to be at an angle like that, and then on top we will have this piece, which of course I'm not sure what this is, but I'm not a helicopter mechanic, so I cannot know every single piece. Okay, that assembly is ready, and it will go straight on top of the cabin ceiling. Here we have a notch and a corresponding key, so alignment is provided. Generous amount of glue to make it very nicely glued in, because this is where the main rotor will be mounted, and we don't want it to come off when the fuselage is actually assembled, because there will be not many ways to fix that. A very similar sequence needs to be done on the right hand side fuselage, so this means that the cheek window needs to be installed. Just like on the other side, I will paint the edge with black paint. And while I am waiting for the paint to cure, I will have fun with some ejector pin mark sanding and filling. Great fun, isn't it? Now let's glue the cheek window in position. And again, very good results due to the engineering. And finally we get the small plate just the same way as on the other side. Plate goes in first, and then when the glue is set, I will deal with the molding imperfections. And with that done, I think it is time to put today's episode to bed. We covered a lot of ground. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy modeling, fellas.